Thanks for watching Slice of Sci-Fi. I'm Noah Richmond.
And I'm Lewis Howley, and we're here to review Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
That's right. The follow-up to the 2018 uh, Black Panther film starring Chadwick Boseman. That was a film that obviously was quite a big success, quite a big hit, and has then the sequel has then had nothing but production problems. Number one being the loss of the lead actor, who obviously sadly passed before they could get the sequel done with him. So that, of course, created all kinds of chaos, rewrites, and trying to figure out where to go with it. When they did go into production again without the Black Panther, they then had a very bad accident with the lead actress, and once again the production was thrown off schedule. So the question is, with all this time and all this development and all the barriers that went wrong, um, what did they want? What did they eventually come up with the final product? And did we think it was worth it? So I guess to set a little bit of the stage, the film that opens up is giving us Wakanda, the mythical African kingdom originally introduced to us in the Black Panther movie, and it opens immediately with an acknowledgement that the king has died, and with everybody coming to grips with the fact that this character, who had been our main character last film, is no longer with us. They didn't recast him for this movie. They went and said, yeah, the actor died and the character died with him. And then the question is, where does the story go from here? How does Wakanda find itself from here? So I think that setting where we're going with this. How did you feel about the film? What were things that you found interesting about where they went, considering what they had to work with?
Well, I will say that upon reflection, a lot of the movie reminded me of an old Buck Rogers serial because there was a lot of uh, people in ornate costume, essentially, doing battle with significant technology. Um, I will say that I thought that they did a nice job of paying tribute to Chadwick Boseman, both in the initial funeral scene, which was very well done, if a little prolonged, and it set the tone for the kind of respect that the kingdom of Wakanda deserved and would merit later on when they appear at the United Nations after someone tries to steal their vibranium. And I thought that was a very pivotal scene because it had the Queen exercising her power in a way that showed female power, which was one of the themes of the film, certainly. Because in essence, with the exception of M'Baku, the leader of the Jabari, and the surprise that we'll get to in a second of the other major player in this film, there was a lot of female empowerment, a lot of initiative, a lot of creativity, a lot of uh, courage, ability to deal with adversity. Another theme of the film was dealing with grief because Princess Shuri has a difficult time dealing with the death of her brother. And in some ways, the whole movie is a meditation on how she deals with her grief as she processes it. And of course, everyone processes grief in a different way. And so there's no timetable for grief, even though her mother, the queen, wants her to process it more quickly and deal with it more directly. It has to go at her timetable, the princess's timetable. And I thought there were some nice uh, anti-colonial statements made in the film, in particular when, and I'll just let the cat out of the bag, when Namor and his kingdom are revealed to exist. We get the origin story in which a young Namor comes to land to bury his mother and sees this terrible colonial oppression of his people, or the people he came from, before they all went underwater, and basically kicks ass, and refuses to put up with it. And now both of these countries, Wakanda and Talokan, uh, face exploitation by essentially historically colonial powers for their vibranium. And so that aspect of the film I thought was very well done, you know. But those are my initial thoughts, and we'll go into those some other things in more detail after you give your reflections, Noah.
Yeah, I mean, my reflections in terms of the things that I enjoyed about the film, certainly some of the effect sequences, particularly towards the later part of what turns out to be a very long epic movie, and some of the scenes that are shot in the water with super heroic things, fighting going on. Um, as well as the when uh, you see what they decide to do eventually with the Black Panther mythology. It's sort of fun to see what when that finally emerges. Um, those are the things that come to mind for me as the positives. Um, but I think I'm going to also, now that we've said our positives and our reflections, I'm going to say that overall I was actually very disappointed, and for the reasons being that with the original film, there was a sense with the original film of something new, something fresh that I hadn't seen before on the screen. And not only was it new and fresh, but creating this African kingdom and this fantasy African world that borrows from all sorts of different cultures from around that continent, and um, draws you in, and additionally has a very mythic quality about it, that that it's not just bringing you in terms of the aesthetics of it, but also telling a story about these tribes and about the king, and explorations of kingship, and um, what it means uh, to rule justly. And so that was something that was just very absorbing about the original. And the lead that they had, Chadwick Boseman, was somebody that just embodied such a spirit of nobility, and in a sense almost was kingly just by projecting what uh, projecting this to the world. This film, I just somehow felt like it just felt like a typical Hollywood superhero action film, and none of those unique characteristics from the original carried over for me in the sequel. I just didn't get drawn into it like that. I didn't feel like there was much exploration of any sort of real mythology that felt organic and um, enticing the way that the first one had. And I I also felt like it suffered from the lack of that central presence that was so significant to making Black Panther what it was in the initial. This one felt much more unfocused. There wasn't any clear point of reference, anything uh, clearly drawing it all together. And in addition, this one was just went on for almost 3 hours, and my clock not even an hour and a half into it. um, it, it just, there's a lot of exposition, a lot of screen time with not much really going on, and what is going on is just, for me, it just didn't seem very focused, and um, I uh, I just found myself fighting to keep my eyes open through a lot of it.
Well, I will say that I found there were some difficulties with the tone because there were the scenes with Shuri and Namor in his kingdom where they were buddy buddy, and then suddenly we're almost immediately at war again. And I found those changes a little abrupt. I also thought that once again there was too much what I call Avengers angst. And by that I mean we have to process emotions over and over and over again. It's never enough to just say them once. We have to hear it over and over. And so this was the case, unfortunately, with the grief that Shuri was going over. We had to hear about that continually. And I thought that was way too long. There's a montage sequence toward the end of the film where basically an herb is being created that Shuri will drink that transforms her. Not to give too many spoilers away,
Yeah, that's
but that montage scene goes on and on and on. I mean, I thought, when is this ever ending? And it was just too much. Also, in the end, I wasn't sure if the patriarchy was being reestablished, so it was very confusing to me. um, After all the effort that had been put in to um, talk about um, or to create the presence of these strong feminine characters, and they're still significant. But I would hate to see all of the progress that I felt was made, considering that Chadwick Boseman did die, and so Black Panther died. T'Challa. I do want to read some comments just quickly from the production notes, which I feel are relevant. I'll try not to block myself with my notes. But these were comments from the director, and he said there was an expectation of a level of cultural specificity and for there to be a seriousness to presentation of cultural things. And I found that to be those nuances to be really the highlight of the movie. The sets, the costumes, the recreation of village life in Wakanda. We didn't see too much of the underwater capital of Talokan to make a judgment. And I did like the score, which I felt was incorporating a lot of native instrumentation. And um, the person who created the score, Ludwig Göransson, says that story elements, and I think this is actually Kugler talking, as story elements were inspired by both Nigerian and Mesoamerican cultures. Recording sessions took place in locations such as Lagos, Nigeria, and Mexico City. We worked with music archaeologists in Mexico to research sounds, much of which the world has not heard, says Goranson. Throughout the score, you'll hear instruments native to the Mayan experience, and on the soundtrack, you'll hear a Mayan rapper, Pat Boy. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever features more than 20 original song moments with African, Mesoamerican, and American instrumentation. Um, and so I think that aspect of the film was very well done. There was a lot of thought that went into that, and I thought that played out well. Now, I will say that Goranson's score in the battle scenes was your typical over the top manipulative score. It's just filler noise. But the other parts of the score with the native elements were excellent. I also checked because I was not sure what languages were being spoken, if they were real or if they were created. And I found out that the Wakandan language is basically Xhosa, I think it's pronounced. It's spelled Xhosa, which is an African language. And the Tolokan language was Yucatec Mayan, and also a real language because some of the actors had to learn it. And so, again, I have to give credit where credit is due in terms of those aspects of the film. But those don't make a film. I mean, you have to have a story, and a story that's interesting. And I mean, over 2.5 hours. Oh my gosh, it was
So,
just
Lewis, I
never
have to
ending.
ask, were you ever a Marvel Comics reader back in the 1970s, 1980s?
I was.
So,
In fact, I had a college roommate, believe it or not, who had subscriptions and had collected all of the back issues of various Marvel comics. And so I went through and read all of them, the back issues, and when current ones would come in.
so
And but go ahead.
did you specifically read Namor?
I
Namor
only
the Submariner?
recall I only recall Namor as being incidental in other comics. I never read any comics that were directly about Namor. But maybe you want to fill in on that, Noah, and give your
Well, yeah,
commentary
I
on
mean,
that.
I can't, like you, my main association with Namor is more as honestly almost more of a villain character in a lot of the comics, which he largely is in this movie as well. Of course, a better term for him is anti-hero than villain, because he's protective of his underwater kingdom, and he hates the surface world, and not without reason. um,
Correct.
but see, one thing one thing that for me is, I do have an association with Namor and Namor of Atlantis, and these Atlantean, these blue-skinned Atlanteans that are these just completely alien race, kind of, uh, uh, you know, like the aliens in Avatar or something like that. And um, for me, it's a little bit like, if you were to see somebody does a new Star Trek reboot, and you go to watch it, and they introduce you to the Vulcans, and the Vulcans are all people with these very Spanish sounding names, and have these very Latin American customs, and like I get it. Uh, on one hand, like I can see that they put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into really hitting those notes and getting it right. But at the same time, if you've grown up with Star Trek as as it's existed since 1960, and then suddenly that's what a Vulcan is, it's can be difficult to this was my experience. I was like, okay, I get it, but that's not Namor.
So you had cognitive dissonance over that.
Right, right, yeah. Like it was just this sort of a weird, puzzling thing to me. Like, okay, I mean, I intellectually understand why this is, but I, I've read these books and I know this character, and I know there's this sort of alien world, and I don't know, this doesn't match up. And so I don't know. Yeah, for me that was just, I don't really know what to say about it other than, yeah, it was cognitive dissonance for me. Like it left me just more puzzled than like, wow, Namor is on screen. It was just more like, okay, now there's some guy that it's called Namor. And, um, yeah, it was just, I don't know. I just found it strange. Uh, um, I guess yet another landmark of the Marvel Cinematic Universe having just become so much its own thing that people who are reading the comics back in the 70s and 80s just aren't able to recognize it so much.
Yeah, we're almost in a post-literate Marvel time with the cinematic universe, and uh, I get your point about that. For me, I was a little mystified at first by the introduction of this character because I thought, is that who I think it is? Because I really wasn't sure. Yeah, they were from, you could see they came from the ocean, but I mean, you didn't really know for a long time. And of course, then they went to great lengths to explore the mythology of the creation, which took up probably a good 20 minutes of the film. And I was thinking about this because, the audience was pretty receptive to the film. I mean, there was some applause during certain parts of the movie, and, there was general applause when it ended. Although maybe that was just relief that it was finally over after so long. But upon reflection, I'm thinking to myself, maybe a movie like this that is so long is really not suitable for a theater showing. Maybe it is meant to be streamed, although of course then you lose the wonderful big screen effects of the visual effects. But aside from that, the sheer length of it, I've often wondered why, now that it's so routine, especially with Marvel movies, to have them drag on over 2 hours, that we haven't gone back to having intermissions, which we had when I was younger for longer films that were shown in Cinerama. And if nothing else, the concessionaire could cash in on concession sales during the intermission. It would actually be profitable for the theater. Um, and anyway, those are just kinds of asides. I just thought about it as I was thinking about the length of this experience, and the general length of any Marvel movie in general these days. Um, it almost makes me long for those wonderful 1950s science fiction movies that were 90 minutes long or
Yeah.
less.
All right. So final thoughts then. What would you say as a final thought, and if you were to give this a rating on a 1 to 5 star scale, what would you give it?
Yeah, I think I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like, I feel like it gets an A for effort, but in terms of execution, that's a different story. If 3 is average, I think I might give it a 3.5. Um, because it's better than that, better than average, but not much more than that. in my opinion. There are just too
Oh,
many flaws, even with all the good parts in it.
yeah. Well, what I would say about it is this movie is appropriately named Wakanda Forever because that's how long the film seems. It just really overstayed its welcome for me, and yeah, and for me, I just couldn't get past Chadwick Boseman just not being there, and obviously, there's nothing anybody can do about that. But I didn't feel like there was anything in there that filled that hole for me. That really brought that same level of gravitas to the screen and that same level of engagement, and similarly just the same level of world building wasn't there. So to me it was a 2 out of 5. That there were some sequences that I found engaging, but overall it just was overall a disappointment. So
Yeah, to me, I know there's been Oscar buzz for the movie, but and it probably will get a nomination for best film. But I mean, I can't help but feel a little bit disappointed because I really hoped it would be better.
yeah. Anyway, I think that's our thoughts on Wakanda Forever. And thanks very much for watching Slice of SciFi.
Bye, everybody.
Slice of SciFi.